Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. It's the 17th of October, Friday, here in Washington. Webster Tarpley reporting. Week very dense with events and full of opportunities to intervene for people of goodwill, and we'll have plenty of them. Please take notes. Get your notebooks, right? As it was once said, everybody serious carries a notebook of some kind. So here's our situation. The tax Wall Street Party is making history. The intervention of the tax Wall Street Party has, I believe, contributed to positive changes in the course of world history during this past week. You'll remember back in 2011, we didn't have the tax Wall Street Party or the United Front Against Austerity. I nevertheless supported Sherry Honkeloff for sheriff of Philadelphia. She later went on to become Green Party vice presidential candidate. But in 2011, she was talking about stopping all foreclosures as the sheriff of Philadelphia, not doing anymore. In 2012, we founded the tax Wall Street Party, United Front Against Austerity, about 2 years ago right now, right on the eve of Superstorm Sandy. In 2012, we founded it. 2013, we had candidates, Randy Credico for mayor of New York as a Democrat and then as tax Wall Street Party. This year we have at least two candidates, one independent, James Hinton in the 5th District of California, and Dan Burdorf, fine candidate in the state of Nebraska. We'll hear from both of those later. But this is now going to grow. Here are the 3 points where I think we've made a difference. The first is the situation of Kobane, the Kurds fighting the ISIS terrorists in and around the northern Iraqi city of Kobane. And the reality here is that the ISIS terrorists have been defeated despite the best efforts of the defeatist pro-terrorist cabal in the Pentagon to build them up, right? Remember the ISIS terrorists, 10 feet tall, invulnerable supermen with magical powers? They've been crushed. They've been defeated. They're running away from Kobane with their, whatever they have, right? They're on the run. And they should be strafed mercilessly and cut down as they try to pull back. These are butchers. These are the enemies of civilization. Don't hesitate any more than you would with any horrible enemy, right? It's in the same league with the totalitarians of the 20th century there in the mid the 30s to 40s. Now, how did this happen? The U.S. has increased the number of sorties. We're told that 122 sorties so far have been flown in and around Kobane to clobber these ISIS characters. And that's, of course, that's not enough, right? I began talking, if you look at the Tarpley.net of last week, you'll see there my statistics. The U.S. flew 100,000 sorties against Iraq in 1 month at the beginning of 1991. 3,335 sorties per day. And as of the last week, it was about 2,000 sorties against ISIS over 2 months, and that's 35 a day. So that's 1/100th of it. That's not enough. Can't you get up to 1/10 of what you did against Saddam Hussein? Since this now is the end of the world, as you say, so that's the thing. We and this at the middle of the week, I began seeing for the first time on CNN actual statistics of how many sorties had been flown, and I call your attention to my Twitter feed. What a real president would tell Dempsey. Dempsey, if one more ISIS tank reaches Kobane, you're fired. You can bring in Donald Trump or whoever you want. You're fired. And start firing these Pentagon clowns, defeatists, right? In the McClellan tradition, right? Up there with Nathaniel Banks and Ben Butler on the military side and some others, right? These characters not effective. And remember, the strategy of the warmongers is to maintain a phony air war and to exhaust people's patience with that, to exasperate and frustrate the public with a phony air war and then argue for the heavy ground divisions so lots and lots of people get killed and the military industrial and these Pentagon careerists and everything can get what they want. That's why we reject it. And that goes for General Dempsey, and that goes for General Allen. Remember him, the friend of Jill Kelly down there in Tampa. This is no good. He was presumably part of the Petraeus clique. He was ousted, and now Skull and Bones Kerry brought him in through the back door. And you might want to fire Kerry, too. Kerry, if you can't get Turkey to play ball, to seal that border to ISIS, to open up Incirlik for combat missions, you're fired. That's what a Secretary of State does. Now, we do have the news that the Turks are now allowing drones to be flown out of Turkey. But we want that Incirlik. And the message to skunk Erdogan is, you play ball or out of NATO. You're out. You take your chances on your own. See what the Muslim Brotherhood will do for you there. Remember, it's an axis of evil, as I was able to point out on Press TV this past week. Who is in the real axis of evil? Turkey, Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, and their admirers, McCain, and a clique in the Pentagon who think that it's clever to play ISIS against Iran, Syria, and these other enemies. And this doesn't work. So what I'm claiming credit for is that the Tax Wall Street Party has made a significant contribution to putting the pressure on the Pentagon, on these generals by name, and also on the Obama White House. Escalate those sorties. No more phony war. I introduced the concept of the phony war in this current phase. Okay, so that's number one, and of course you got to keep that up. We'll talk about later how we're going to push forward with the arrest McCain for ISIS, and indeed that beautiful sort of photo montage we have. I have it on Tarpley.net also, of McCain actually being that masked guy that the FBI is looking for. The second point is we have this very interesting short ad for Democrats by a group here in Washington, and this is the cut. All of these Republican reactionaries, proto-fascists, yelling how they want to cut the budget, they want to cut the general welfare, and so forth. Well, I think I have to take some credit for that. And how about the idea that austerity kills, that it's killer cuts, genocidal austerity. Don't just say cuts, say killer cuts, right? The enemy says job-destroying regulations, fine. We'll attack with killer cuts, genocidal austerity. For example, the headline of this broadcast last week, or actually the United Front Radio of October 6th, austerity ghouls and killer cuts by sequestration threaten the lives of all Americans. And that is now the subject of this cut. Now, if the Democratic Party, these schmoes, would finally pick up on the cut video and use that in some of these races, they might actually get somewhere. But the idea now is the notion that if you cut the National Institutes of Health, you don't have a vaccine when you need it. Or if you cut the Texas health system, that can kill people. This is now out. And we've got one more point, which we'll get to in just a second. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, 17th of October here in Washington, D.C. Tarpley reporting. Thanks to Lionel in New York and his charming wife for the wonderful comedy evening that Lionel put on last Saturday evening in the cuttery in the cutting room in Manhattan. And this was very interesting. Lionel attacking the mayors, right? Attacking Giuliani, Bloomberg, de Blasio attacking Al Sharpton. Not easy to do in a place like this. And this is the use of comic genius as a satire against the rich, the powerful, and the evil, because that's the necessary direction of realistic satire and humor. So look, the Tax Wall Street Party makes history. We pound away on the sorties, right? 3,300 against Saddam and 30 now? No, it's not enough. Make it more like 300. Well, at least per day. At least some progress in that direction. Dempsey, Allen, and the rest of these McClellans are under pressure now. Their phony war is exposed. Continue with that. Second one is austerity kills. You can see it. If the NIH had a cure, then there'd be a cure. If Rick Perry hadn't wrecked the Texas system, we wouldn't have this chaos. Rick Perry, we'll get to him. And then the third point is this issue of divided government. We do not want the Republicans to take over the Senate. The issue is the permanent austerity dictatorship, which we must avoid. And, of course, Obama, his veto, very weak because of his weakness, because of his passivity, because of his fear. He's not going to be a strong leader to fight off a bunch of fascist Republicans in the next 2 years. And remember, all you have to do is get the rats cabal, Roberts, Alito, Thomas, and Scalia, +1, and you can impose the permanent austerity dictatorship. The Republicans, in spite of everything, only due to the ineptitude of the Democrats, might have president, Congress, and Supreme Court. What will they do? They will take the vote away from the black, the poor, the Hispanic, students, others, absolutely shameless, and they will wipe out unions. They will wipe out minimum wage unions and so forth. Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. It's the 17th of October, Friday, here in Washington. Webster Tarpley reporting, week, very dense with events and full of opportunities to intervene for people of goodwill, and we'll have plenty of them. Please take notes, get your notebooks, right? As it was once said, everybody's serious, but this is now going to grow. Here are the 3 points where I think we've made a difference. The first is the situation of Kobane, the Kurds fighting the ISIS terrorists in and around the northern Iraqi city of Kobane. And the reality here is that the ISIS terrorists have been defeated despite the best efforts of the defeatist carries a notebook of some kind. So here's our situation. The Tax Wall Street Party is making history. The intervention of the Tax Wall Street Party has, I believe, contributed to positive changes in the course of world history during this past week. You'll remember, back in 2011, we didn't have the Tax Wall Street Party or the United Front Against Austerity. Nevertheless, 2012, we founded it. 2013, we had candidates, Randy Credico for mayor of New York as a Democrat and then as Tax Wall Street Party. This year we have at least 2 candidates, one independent, James Hinton in the 5th District of California, and Dan Burdorf, fine candidate in the state of Nebraska. We'll hear from both of those later. Supported Sherry Honkola for sheriff of Philadelphia. She later went on to become Green Party vice presidential candidate. But in 2011, she was talking about stopping all foreclosures as the sheriff of Philadelphia, not doing anymore. In 2012, we founded the Tax Wall Street Party, United Front Against Austerity, about 2 years ago right now, right on the eve of Superstorm Sandy. In